Welcome to Strategy Sessions by Thirsty Bandit Consulting, Episode 3, User Experience.
Greetings, everyone. This is Corey Kraychek, and I'm here with Rachel Brown and our guest, Mike Madio. Mike, did I pronounce that name correctly, that last name, Madaio?
Yes.
Wonderful.
It
As a
was it
person,
was changed along the way to be Americanized, but that's how we
there you
say
go. As a person with a last name like Kraychek, I
it.
know the pitfalls of the Americanization of European last names. Anyway, welcome to Strategy Sessions. Today we are going to be talking about user experience, and Mike is a really fascinating guest. Mike has spent, probably the last few decades doing user experience within e-commerce for multi-billion-dollar companies. He's an author and he is a wine lover and really one of the only folks within the Mid-Atlantic that I'm aware of that's more of like a historian for the East Coast wine scene. So, Mike, thanks for joining us.
History buff, at least, yes.
Yeah, history buff. Sure, we can say expert. That's okay. But Mike, yeah, what am I missing? What tell us a little bit about yourself, and then we'll get into some questions.
Yeah, it's always a tough question in this context because I have the wine side and the UX side, but try to give a brief overview of both. So as you said, last 25 years working in the user experience space, design, research, all that kind of stuff. And we'll talk about a little bit more about what that is for anyone who's not familiar in a minute. And then on the wine side, yeah, I've been writing about wine for many years now and published in Wine Enthusiast and Vine Pair and places like that. I'm a Vinitaly International Academy Italian wine ambassador. It's a mouthful. Um, and also run a website that covers local Pennsylvania wines and tries to highlight some of the best dry wines in an emerging region like Pennsylvania. So lots of different stuff in the wine space, and as we're going to talk today, looking to sort of bring the wine and the UX together and see what we can do with that.
Definitely. I think when we talk about tasting rooms and websites and all these different things, user experience is a really big part of that. So for you, with all of your background and all of the pots that you've been able to kind of dabble in, where do you see wineries like missing the mark when it comes to user experience? And what do you think that they should be prioritizing to really enhance that experience for their guests?
Yeah, so it's interesting you bring up the tasting room because user experience, when I say user experience, I often think of it as the digital user experience. I mean, that's certainly my background. I mean, you can use the term customer experience, which tends to talk about the experience of the full journey, whereas user experience is a little more on the digital side. But one thing that's really interesting is that if you were a winery and you built a tasting room, for the first time, you're going to think about so many different things, right? You're going to think about where's the bar, what's the seating like, how's the staff dressed, what is the glassware like, what are the offerings on the menu, flights, et cetera, right? There are so many details that you have to think about. And the same thing goes for your digital experience, your website and so forth. But one thing I feel like I see is that people sort of think it's a one-time like set and forget, right? But UX is really a practice. And I bring up the tasting room because it's like if you were to build that tasting room and make all those decisions and then never think about it again for the life of your winery, that's what it would be like to not like really be monitoring and paying attention and optimizing and updating your website as you go and really thinking about those things on a regular basis and investing in those things on a regular basis. So I think really understanding that it's a practice, that it's an important thing, is incredibly important.
Yeah, I
Um,
think for
Sorry,
us,
go
right?
ahead. Go ahead.
No,
Sorry.
it's fine. Yeah, we talk a lot about adaptability and the ability to be nimble in your decision making as you sort of evolve your brand, particularly now with the way that the industry landscape is. So, applying that same mentality to user experience, I think, is imperative. Right? You have to be constantly working, reworking, adjusting, you know, capitalizing on the data that you have in order to make those changes. So totally makes sense.
I think the other thing is if you have someone come into your tasting room or encounter your brand in some other place out in the world, at a restaurant, store, whatever, and they have a good experience, but then they go to your website and they have a bad experience, you just lost them, right? So it's part of that ecosystem that you need to make sure really ties into all the other work that you're doing.
Yeah,
Definitely, yeah. It's a cohesion between everything. It's like the pre-visit, the post-visit, everything in between. They all need to be able to flow together.
Yeah, exactly.
and we like to, I know when we consult, we actually like to look outside of the industry for some best practices, because I feel like it can get very stale and very repetitive if you're looking only within your own industry. So the work that you've done, can you give us some really good examples of UX that could be easily applied within the wine industry that haven't maybe originated within the wine industry?
Sure. And I mean, I think, obviously the retail space in sort of general e-commerce is a bit ahead of wine. And I think you see that with Shopify in particular. There, Shopify is a like a cart and checkout engine that you would purchase and subscribe to essentially, and they would conduct that for you. And so, there are some wineries who use Shopify, but they're really killing it when it comes to just like really easy, quick experience as you go through the checkout flow. Now, part of that is because they have literally like 5 million stores out there with Shopify. So when you go to a place and they have the Shopify checkout, typically you've already purchased, like they already know who you are. So you type in your email address. You do have to do a quick verification, but once that's done, it knows everything about you. You just click. The way I said it sounds scary, but I mean, when you're doing it, it's so fast and easy that it really is just a fantastic experience. And in the wine space, there are some like what sort of like compliance and sort of unique things about purchasing alcohol that
Age
yeah,
gates.
that Shopify is not necessarily like optimized for. I mean, there are wine places using Shopify, but there are also some wine, like some quasi competitors to Shopify that are specifically focused on alcohol. But I think just looking at Shopify, like as if you go through their process, whether you have an account or not, like they've really optimized every step and they're only asking you for the information that they absolutely need to place that order and really just making it so easy and fast that that's a good just example of even if it's a slightly different and unique scenario, it's always about how do we make this so easy for people that they're not going to get hung up on it on any of these things. It's interesting. I mean, people always say to me, "Oh, well, what's a great winery website?" And
Right.
I mean, not that there aren't ones, but I mean, as a UX person, there's always you always see something that can be improved. There, you could say, "Oh, this person's doing a great job with this one aspect of it, but here are 3 other things that they could fix." So it is a little trickier in that case, but certainly, I think Shopify is a good example of someone who's killing it right now, at least.
Yeah, I mean,
I
Rachel and
think,
I, yeah, I mean, we've worked a bunch on Shopify for
yes,
wine.
we have. Yeah. I think that kind of transitions too with like watching people who are doing things really well and people who are innovative and like kind of playing around and doing these things. So where do you personally kind of like find inspiration within this realm when you're consulting and working with people on what they could do to kind of improve?
Yeah, and so it's maybe a little bit of a pivot from what we were just talking about, but I think that the background of a UX person and the reason why um, I claim expertise in this space really comes down to the research that I've done. I've watched like thousands of people use websites and apps and things of that nature, and really doing that observation. I mean, yes, you can go to school for this and you can read about it and follow the best practices and principles, but at the end of the day, watching people use websites and seeing like where they get confused, where they get hung up, where they find a lot of success or are delighted, those just doing that over and over again throughout my career has really been the thing that drives so much of understanding, like, oh, this is a problem, because I've seen, dozens of people not be able to read this text and it's too small and express frustration with that. And I've seen that frustration firsthand. So that's really, I think, a key piece of the UX experts toolkit, and would certainly say, like, if you're going to bring in someone and work with them, like, ask them if they do that, because if they don't, then they probably can't claim to be a UX expert.
Man, that's a great segue to our last question here, which is, for clients or wineries looking to improve their current UX, where should they start?
Yeah, and I mean, of course, I'm biased, and I'll say, like, hiring an expert like myself is, can do some consulting is always, always a good step. And we can do, relatively small audits. A lot of places they're what, to use a corporate buzzword, low hanging fruit, that someone who's, been working in this industry can look at and say, oh, here are 10 things that you could fix pretty quickly and easily. And that's a low cost way to kind of get into it. But even if you don't have any budget at all, you can still just test your website across the board. One thing I see a lot of is, when people are at work and they have a website or a digital experience that they run at work, a lot of times they're going to look at that on a computer, because that's where you do your work, right? But, like, the majority of people who come to your website or other digital experiences are doing it on mobile. So if you're not checking all your experiences on mobile, like, thoroughly, you're missing a huge part of what the majority of people who are experiencing those things are seeing. So, like, just looking at it on a mobile device can be a huge
Mhm.
way to just notice. I've seen that so many times, where I look at it on mobile and there are things that just don't even work, or, like, they're completely broken or whatever, and I call it out and they go, oh, well, I've never even looked at that, because I always look at it on a computer. So simply just looking at it is an easy step. And then another thing you could do is, like, ask a friend, say, hey, go buy a wine on my site, go make a tasting room reservation, and just look and see, like, do they get confused? Do they get caught up um, on anything? And so those are some things that you can do that don't cost anything.
No, and those are great points, especially as the industry is grappling with trying to better engage your younger demographics, your younger drinkers, your Gen Zs and your millennials. Mobile is really the only way to communicate
Yeah.
with those demographics. And
I'm old, so I need a big screen, but I mean,
yeah. Well, I think we can all remember the time when you had to build multiple sites based upon screen size, and then
yeah,
responsive design
yeah,
came out that sort of did it more. And now it's just an automatic, and that's why platforms like Shopify are so darn good at this, is because it takes away some of the guesswork of how will this be delivered in mobile versus a traditional PC, computer, laptop, or even a tablet format.
yeah,
Um, but I mean, if you want to, your best chance of engaging those emerging audiences is to ensure that your mobile usability is at
yeah,
peak
100%.
performance. Yeah. So. No, this has been great. Before we go, I mean, I brought the book down with me. I just wanted to plug for you Lost
Thank you.
Mount 10. I've been reading this book. This is a great summer read. It talks about the history of wineries and the resorts out in Reading, Pennsylvania, just about an hour northwest of Philadelphia. And who would have thought, right, that the wine history is as rich and as deep? Well, we would, because we're East Coasters. But for anyone watching this that's not from this area, it's a pretty incredible read and a really neat book. Any yeah, any fun fact you want to leave the audience with from that?
Yeah, I mean, I appreciate the plug, and it seems like kind of a niche thing, but I think what was interesting when we dug into it was that the origins of the American wine scene really date back to around Philadelphia. William Penn had planted some grapes he brought over from Bordeaux, and they failed, but they sort of miraculously crossed with some native grapes, and that made the very first hybrid, or at least the first documented hybrid. I mean, it's certainly possible that some existed before then, but the first documented one was called Alexander, and that really jump-started the wine industry in southeastern Pennsylvania, but then also, up and down the East Coast over into Ohio. There was a guy, I mean, it's a little outside the realm of the book, but there was a guy in Ohio who really had the first successful winery in the States in the 1800s that really, came back to Philly. That's where he originally sourced his grapes. So some really interesting stuff there for the history buffs out there.
Oh, it's absolutely. And I mean, for us that we sort of believe that great wine can be produced anywhere. It's a great read, and it's certainly useful for folks that are trying to that want to learn more and are open to learning
Yeah.
more. So Mike, thanks for joining us. We really appreciate the time. It's got me thinking about some
Thanks
things
for
that
having
we
me.
need to do with our clients and their websites, and how we can start improving their UX. That's going to pretty much do it for us for this session of strategy sessions. Join us next time, and in the interim, take a look at that your mobile site. Make sure it's where it needs to be. All right, take care, everyone.
Thank you for joining us for another episode of Strategy Sessions by Thirsty Bandit Consulting. We look forward to seeing you next time.